You're listening to Empress Conversations podcast with your host, Maggie Peary. Conversations with Maggie. Yeah, yeah. Empress. Join us next time on the next episode of Empress Conversations with Maggie. To learn more about guests or for more information on working with Maggie, go to www.empressconversationswithmaggie.com/get-started. Hello and welcome to another episode of Empress Conversations with Maggie. Today, my guest is the lovely Ramona Charles. Ramona, welcome. It's such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me. It's so good to actually be here in this space with you. It's so amazing.
Oh, I'm so excited. See, we're just some regular Atlanta peaches just having a good time over here on a Friday.
You definitely are.
So, Ramona, tell us more about how you got started in your business and the services that you offer, please.
Well, sure. So first of all, I've been in Atlanta for 17 years now, which means I've been in mental health for about 15. And so, kind of on and off doing mental health, working at the hospital, doing some creative things, just getting a feel for mental health because I absolutely love looking into how people, think, behave, and all of that. But for me, I was, while working at the hospital, I did have my own experiences with my own mental health challenges. And
Okay.
so I was like, you know what? I'm human, you
Yes.
know?
Yes.
So why not use that energy to create, a platform where not only I help other people through therapy, but I also can share some of the tidbits that I've learned throughout the years to help people, especially at work or in their families or in their personal lives. So that led me to starting this podcast and doing some of the other things that I do.
So help us paint this picture. Just give us a little bit more meat because I'm quoting this and I loved it so much. It was such a aha moment. And you have one of your sayings that goes, those seeking therapy are not weak. Hold on,
Mhm.
Ramona. Let me repeat that one more time. Those
Mm,
seeking therapy are not weak.
yeah.
Tell us
You
more.
know, it's such an amazing place to be at where you realize that you're not this bad person or this weak person for going to get help.
Yes.
We don't stigmatize people who go to the doctor for a cut or a broken arm or a sprained ankle. We don't do that. But people who go seek help for depression, anxiety, breakups, life transitions, we're like, oh, you don't need a therapist. And it happens a lot in our communities. And so I had to come to a place, even for myself, where I had to actually tell myself and be okay with seeking therapy for myself.
Mm,
And
mm.
if I had to go through that, I know that there are hundreds of thousands of millions of people out there who are probably experiencing that same thing about feeling stigmatized. So they just don't ask for help or they just don't make it a point to even go.
Let's take it a little bit deeper because um I'm just going to round it off and say we're about the same age. So in thinking of our parents' generation, and when I think of the people of African American descent who have African descent, when it comes to therapy, the very idea of therapy was reserved for people who are crazy in the community, and they didn't seek professional, yes, exactly, air quotes, and they didn't seek professional help. It was always, you go to church, you don't talk about your problems with someone who is licensed, rather than auntie who goes tells your business whenever there's a family event going on, and you find out you're the one who was not part of the family or whatever, and it's all traumatic. But long story short, I'm making jest here, making little jokes, but in all seriousness, that older generation, they didn't believe in therapy. It was always go to church, go to God.
Yeah, I had that experience. I was, my father was heavily involved in the church. He is a first elder. My mother was the women's ministry leader. I was the youth minister, the piano player, the choir director. So we were very heavily involved in church. And because of that, me just speaking up and saying, there's a problem. I have an issue. I need help. I was like, well, let me not say that. I was like, you know what? Let's just get help as a family, thinking that that would actually be helpful for our family to just get help as a whole. But
Mm,
I was the one screaming for help. And so then, you fast forward in my 20s, going to get some therapy and having to, deal with medication and therapy, constantly. I did have that message from my family and also other church members. It was,
mm.
well, how's your prayer life? Well, how's your diet? Well, how's your, you really do need to give everything over to God. And I started feeling so down about that, especially as a Black woman trying to make my way in life, that I hid behind closed doors for a long time. I was like, well, I guess I'm a terrible Christian and a terrible person for seeking therapy. And I had to work so hard to break through that stigma for myself. You do get those messages of, you got to go to church, you got to pray. I it wasn't till years later that I was like, oh, I can have Jesus and
Yes, yes, indeed. Yes, you can have Jesus and a therapist too.
yeah.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
love that. One thing that you just said, Ramona, is that you were kind of seeking answers for yourself and you hid behind the doors here. So if we when I think of family dynamics and I think about how someone is labeled the black sheep of the family, and usually that person is the one who's the most sensitive and feels a lot of the trauma that is unspoken within the family. By no way am I a therapist. This is my own opinion. This is just my thoughts into the situation. How would you address someone who's crying out for whatever the family's dealing with, but the family is not ready for family therapy as a whole?
Hmm. I appreciate that question because, you're absolutely right. I used to deem myself as the black sheep of the family. And I was like the most sensitive. I was the one that was the squeaky wheel. I was the one that was like, I always had something to say about everything.
Mm,
And, so I honestly, being on the other side of that, both, like we say, a helping professional and
mm,
having needed a helping professional,
mm.
um, you know, honestly, from the bottom of my heart, if people are finding themselves in that type of situation, I I would honestly say pull the trigger. Get out there, and there are so many different resources now that you can bring therapy right to your home. You can bring therapy right to you, and you can actually get that help so that you can just start releasing all of that built up and pent up stress and that built up negative energy. Because people need to know that they are supported,
Yes.
especially outside of that family dynamic. They need to know that they are supported. So we're right here. We're in reach. So I would want people to literally say, listen, yesterday I did a Google search, just said therapist near me, and
Mm,
that's literally where it starts.
as simple as that. A simple Google search.
Mhm.
Wow, Ramona, we'll be right back with these other and exciting topics, talking about therapy and workplace and all kinds of good stuff. If you will just hold tight, part two coming up shortly.
Stop trying to figure it all out by yourself. Let the professionals of Imprint Creations talk to you about ways your website can generate consistent monthly revenue for you so that you can live the life you love. Simply go to mprintcreations.com/contact. Fill out the form and someone will reach out to you within 24 hours.
All right, Ramona, thank you so much for covering that regarding family. At least that's a starting place for us. One of the things that you'll see it more on social media, on TikTok, and all these other places, people are beginning to talk more about what it's like in terms of the workplace and needing to feel like you're in a safe space because most often than not, women, black, brown, whatever, there are certain dynamics that are spoken and unspoken. What is your take? Talk to us a little bit more about the services that you offer and most of the things that people are challenged with, that they really can't take to the HR professional, in the workplace. Talk to us about that.
Well, it's interesting. When I started to go through some of my own mental health challenges, it did start affecting, you come from this family dynamic that, we speak about, and then it starts traveling into all different parts of your life. And one of those places for me was in my workplace.
Hmm.
And, not only did I start seeing like some of the things that we needed, which was more kindness in the workplace, more resilience,
Yes.
especially being a working professional, an entrepreneur, even in corporate America, I started seeing how not only mental health challenges can affect the professional life, but professional life can affect mental health challenges as well. They can
Yes.
exacerbate that or start them.
Yes.
Um, I know for myself, having been through some depression, let's put that aside. I also started going through some workplace trauma. And,
Mm,
especially as a Black woman in the workplace, dealing with some attitudes from people, dealing with being thrown under the bus from people,
yes.
being, told that pretty much you're not good enough or you're not liked here or not welcomed in those spaces. That actually didn't do very kindly to my own mental health. So I developed, especially from my experience, I developed a workshop around that. You know,
Mm.
we
Tell us
talk
about
about
it.
coping skills all the time. Like
Yes.
we need to be able to talk about this for the professional space. A lot of women, especially, go through some really, really harsh times in the workplace. So that was a starting off point for me to be able to get more into workplace wellness, especially like what we're seeing on social media.
Ramona, you hit the nail on the head, and I want to expand a little bit more if we can, just take a few minutes here. While conducting my research on TikTok, I'll call it research
Absolutely.
on TikTok, air quotes here. I was, the big thing that was everybody was talking about, women would rather prefer to be in the woods with a bear or a man. And most often than not, women would have chosen the bear. The other one, when flipped around, was if you're a black woman, black or brown, and you're in a conference room at work, would you prefer that a white man or a white woman walk into that office? And
Well,
surprisingly, go ahead, go ahead. What were you about to say? Let
I'm
me know.
I'm interested in hearing. What would you choose?
Well, what would I choose? Woo, that's different. But let me show you. Let me tell you first what surprisingly a lot of the responses were. A lot of the responses from comments that I saw were a lot of women would have chosen the white man versus the woman. So I found that very interesting, and that spoke volumes because workplace trauma, just like you said, is real. So, what are your thoughts on that?
I find that such a interesting topic because I actually would prefer a white male as well. I have been in some very, very tumultuous waters with Black women in the workplace, as well as white women in the workplace, and that's actually where most of my trauma came from. Not saying that there were not none in other spaces with other people, but
Mm,
that's top two where my trauma came from, and that's actually where I started to develop. Again, my workplace, workshop, my podcast out of because I feel like the work that I had to do on myself because of resilience and because of finding my own joy and
yeah.
purpose, with professional work came from those areas. So
Mm,
that actually does, indicate to me that, yeah, if people have been going through some things and would choose a white male in the workplace, I can only imagine what their trauma has been in the professional arena, and why that leads them to that position, especially building off of that, the white male privilege, and allowing that to help them shape their own, professional direction. So that's very interesting to me.
I think so too. I think so too. So, Ramona, you're based right here in Atlanta, Georgia. We're in the same city. How can our listening and viewing audience find you? Let's talk about ways that people can connect with you. Would you share
Please.
that, please?
So I sure can. Listen, so right now I am working with a clinic that is all virtual. So it's definitely all virtual here in Atlanta. I'm excited that we're virtual because, as we saw based on the pandemic, we do need to be able to reach certain areas that are not able to readily just come and go. And let me tell you about Atlanta traffic. So that's another podcast
Oh, yes,
episode.
it is. Yes, it is.
So I am right here in Atlanta and all parts of Georgia via virtual. Now, I also can be found on my podcast, which is Hope in the Workplace, and that's on Spotify and Apple. Um, and I also can be found at on Instagram at Therapy with Ramona C. And Ramona is Ramona. So the reason why I am virtual is because, again, I go to different organizations, I go to different, professional spaces, and I speak about, wellness in the workplace. So I love being able to contact professionals and say, hey, okay, well, you know what, I can come to you, or we could do this virtually because your organization may need me to step in and talk about positivity in the workplace. So that's one of the advantages of, not only being in the Sandy Springs, Dunwoody area, but also virtually in Georgia.
That is fantastic. Now, do me a favor, Ramona, only because my mature ears might not have heard it. You kind of said it a little bit fast. Please tell us your podcast title again, please.
Sure. So a little bit about that. It is Cope in the Workplace. And so that's COPE in the workplace. Think of it like coping skills. And so to cope in the workplace means we are creating overall positive experiences in the workplace. It's a little acronym that I thought about. So cope in the workplace, you could type that in on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
Fantastic. Now, one more thing about in the workplace, because people, you need a job, right? Everybody needs a job. So, what would you say to someone who is trapped with, a situation that is occurring, but is not quite comfortable in going to HR? What is the
Mm.
that you would say, because it needs to feel like a safe workspace, a safe workspace. I can't imagine how traumatizing it would be getting up in the morning, getting dressed, pulling into the parking lot, and immediately the anxiety is through the roof. And that's the reality for a lot of people. So, what is the first thing that you would kind of give some free advice to someone who's in a situation like
It's interesting you bring that, that piece up. I think you've been reading my journal. Um,
that?
because, I had that experience, driving up to the place and literally like you're creeping on into the parking lot and all of a sudden you're like, okay, all right, walls are closing in. And so, you know,
Stop trying to figure it all out by yourself. Let the professionals of Imprint Creations talk to you about ways your website can generate consistent monthly revenue for you so that you can live the life you love. Simply go to mprintcreations.com/contact. Fill out the form and someone will reach out to you within 24 hours.
where you drive on up to work and you're feeling the walls closing in on you, you feel that anxiety creeping up, and it's like, I want to drive and turn my car around and be done with this whole thing.
Yes, yes.
Um, so, uh, honestly, through my, professional journeys, I actually would tell people, well, number one, especially, contact your HR person and see if they are connected with any EAP resources. EAP
Mm,
is the Employee Assistance Programs. And
mhm.
through EAP, you actually can get some complimentary therapy services. Now, if that is something that you feel like I'm asking my HR and they're probably going to look at me crazy or a little funny, then absolutely tag into some resources in your community. There are professional development coaches or mentors, especially on Facebook, TikTok, being able to be in those professional consultation spaces. some of those some of those resources they might actually tell you to do. And I love this part of where we're at in 2024. We
Mm,
do have options out here, right? Back in my grandparents day, back in my great grandparents days,
yes,
you know the message was, you got to stick in there, you just got to hold your head down and stick in there.
yes. Yeah, and that's
Understand
not
what your
great.
options are. Yeah, understand what your options are. Know what your options are out there, in either in your professional space where you're at with your career or other careers. Know your options and know your value.
That is so good. And thank you for that reminder to definitely access those benefits because you've got to talk about it with someone because next thing you know, you might just implode with all of that stress. Um, so you're like,
Very.
preach. So let's turn the tide a little bit here. Talk to us about the pop group and all the good things that you have coming up.
So the pop group, I just love little acronyms. They're so cute. So I have my Coke podcast, and I have the Pop Group. So the Pop Group is POP, the power of positivity.
Mm,
And with that, what I do is I love to be able to just bring some information in, about different ways that we can stay well, whether that is challenging some anxious thinking, being able to be in healthy relationships, and what does a healthy relationship even mean? Matter of fact, we're not even talking about being in a healthy, intimate relationship. I'm talking about relationship with family, friends. What does healthy relationships mean? We also discuss different ways of being resilient,
yeah.
or workplace wellness. So we gather different pieces of information during those group sessions. So I do have the pop group coming up in June. And you can find that on popwellness.eventbrite.com. And that's popwellness.eventbrite.com. So there's some information on there, so that you can actually get into some personal development. Listen, we're going to be talking about some amazing ways to be resilient in this.
Well, give us a little teaser. Like what? Like what? What?
Okay.
How?
All right. Okay. So,
Just a little bit. Just one. Okay.
all right. So one of my favorites
Okay.
is, the again, the challenging negative thinking. We are in a world where, we have so much social media and media, that are telling us who to be and how to be that
Yes.
person.
Yes. Yes.
And when we don't live up to that standard, then we start talking bad about ourselves.
Yes.
I have been there, I have done that, and it's not a great place to live. And
No.
so we have to change that area code. So what we talk about in our pop group is, listen, number one, know who you are.
Mm,
What makes you unique? I I have to know what makes me unique. What do I value about myself, right? And then number two, being able to allow yourself a moment. Take a moment. Sometimes you just need to take a short breather and
mm,
say, "Hey, listen, I'm going to back up for myself. I'm going to, hear that thought, and I need to be able to say, okay, that thought is not needed at this time. I can actually say, I'm going to let go of that right now. I'm
yes.
going to challenge that thinking. I need
Yes.
to challenge that and be in a space where I'm like, you know what? That's not the thought that I need. I'm going to allow that to flow through, go back out to sea,
Yes.
and replace that with I'm worthy. I am okay in this moment. I
Yes.
can do this. Matter of fact, I'm being challenged right now. My challenges make me stronger.
Mm.
So you see that, right?
Yes, I do. I receive that. And I love the softness, how you are expressing the gentleness of talking to with that inner voice, because the dialogue, and this is so funny because I had a friend mention to me, Maggie, you know that inner voice? And I said, what inner voice? I think I fired my inner voice. But I was laughing within myself as you were saying how gentle when those invasive thoughts come in and you're like, you thank you, but go. And I'm thinking
Yeah.
to myself, you're man, get out of here. I'm not even
Right.
listening to that. We're not even allowing that in that space. Just bounce out. I'm done. And allow things that are positive and feeding me to reside within my spirit. So I appreciate that. And also the difference of learning to talk to ourselves in a
Oh,
more loving way makes a huge difference.
you have to build up some self-compassion, which is,
Yeah,
talking to yourself. And I always say to people, we hear these buzzwords on social media, but in reality, they're very pertinent to our process, our everyday experience, where self-compassion is the goal. And self-care is how we get to the goal. And that self-care may be, the positive affirmations. That self-care may be challenging that negative thinking. And like you said, sometimes I just got to tell myself, stop that.
that's right.
Stop that. No, mm-mm, 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 that ain't it. And so, being able to tell yourself, I didn't do everything that I set out to do today. That doesn't make me a bad person. It just means tomorrow I have the opportunity to revisit those goals again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Besides the work that you're doing on the pop in the pop, and I'm just using your acronym again here, but besides
Yeah.
the work that you're doing, what else? Because one of the things that you do have listed is woman empowerment coach. So, what other work do you do in that arena?
Yeah, so absolutely. So, again, we do have a lot more women, doing a lot of amazing things out here, especially in the professional spaces. And, a lot of those women, and shout out to them, are doing it, carrying families and raising children and, doing 5 and 10 businesses all together. And sometimes those women are doing that based off of the message that they have to keep going. They have to do all these things. You
Mhm.
can't say that you need some help. You can't say that you have burnout happening. So what I normally do is, I like to work with women either on an individual or a group basis where woman to woman, we talk about some of those empowering needs. I do individual therapy with women. I do short sessions, either 5 to 10 sessions, where they can have the opportunity to talk to me about some of the challenges that they may be facing. Let's tackle that. Let's be able to say, hey, this is what I'm going through. This is what I need. This is the type of motivation that I need. And so we create those sessions around being able to continue to keep that woman empowered, keep that woman motivated, so that they could do the work that they're doing to take over the world.
Indeed, okay, take over the world. I love it. Now, in order to balance this thing out, and I'm so grateful that the world is making more and more resources readily available for women. But in terms of men, what are the resources that they can also get? Granted, they may not be as talkative, and perhaps not everybody is open to therapy as much as perhaps women are, but there have to be some sort of resources. What is there for them?
Yeah, so it's interesting that you bring that up. I when I was getting in therapy as a therapist, I was like, what, I'm gonna just do therapy for everybody. I am really finding out that a lot of men are like, no, like I don't want to do this. So that's why a lot of therapy is catered to women. But my
Mm,
men, there is a growing trend for men, especially Black men in Atlanta, where there are so much more resources for men. Shout out to one of my great therapy friends, Jared Washington, who is, doing a lot of this work for especially men in the community, because
Okay.
men need to know that there are resources for them too. The same therapy that, because now with some of my male clients that I'm getting, they're like, you know what? I actually didn't think I needed this, but I need it. Can I see you next week? It Men need a space where they're not judged. They're not seen as I gotta be strong all the time. You know,
Yes.
they are seen as my feelings are valid, my experiences are real. And so there are a lot of resources out there for both men and women. Um, it's slipping my mind right now, but please Google Jared Washington. He is attached to some of the male resources for therapy.
Thank you for sharing that. That indeed that kind of helps balance the whole thing, because even though again, I'm pro women and all this other wonderful stuff, but I do have brothers, I had a dad, and there's all kinds of things. So I appreciate you for sharing that resource. What are the other workshops? Because I know you have so much going on. Tell us all the things. We want to know all the things, friend. Share with us, talk to us here.
You know what? So Cope in the workplace is something that is so near and dear to me. And the reason why I say that is because, again, we do talk about women a lot. And one of the things that I noticed was, yeah, men and women in the workspace need to be able to have that motivation. I was talking to a gentleman who owned a company, and as I'm doing work life wellness balance with my Cope in the workplace type of workshop, he's like, let me ask you something. What is balance? What does that even mean? And I said, yeah, it's balance. You take time for work, you take time for the other things in your life, you make sure you're not burned out. He was like, so what you're telling me is balance means that you're dead. And I was like, oh,
Whoa.
oh. So
Oh,
yeah, so for men like him, and so for business owners like him, they see that as that's slowing me down. I have to continue doing what I do, how I do. One of the ways that
mm,
empower people to cater to the work-life balance is, I'm sure you have probably engaged with this, is yoga. So now I am a certified chair yoga professional. So if you contact me, what I'll do is I'll be like, okay, cool. Where do you work? Where do you want this chair yoga session? What I do is I come to your space,
yeah.
whether that's at work or if you are creating an event, and I'm like, let's do some chair yoga. Let's do some breathing for a second. Let's just stop for at least 30 minutes and let's just give something back to our bodies. We're giving everything to our job. Let's just give something back to our bodies. And
I
so we do
love
that in this space.
I
Mhm.
love that. And that centers you, and just, oh, what a wonderful resource. I love that. Ramona, that is really awesome. I love that. Is there an age limit that you have for chair yoga? Because there are some, go ahead.
Yeah, no, we do teenage and up. Again, my focus is mostly working professionals, so I do love to do at least 20s and up. Right now, the last chair yoga class I did had some 60-year-olds in there, 70-year-olds. And again, when we do some of the moves or some of the positions that we do, we make sure that it's catered to their level, of expertise, or their level of being able to stretch and bend. Not everybody's going to be able to
Y-
crumple up into a pretzel in their chair.
Yeah, yes, yes. Is there a limit? Is it a one-on-one yoga class, or there has to be where you have 20 people and they all go to one location? How does that work?
Yeah, so I do have so I've done it for a school before, and we had different sessions. We had like
Mm,
3 different sessions of chair yoga where people signed up. So I had about a limit of 20 people in the classroom, so about 15 to 20 per session. So that creates like this intimate environment for, the professionals to be able
yes.
to allow themselves to dig into the activity where I'm not just yelling out to a crowd of 300 and 400. So
That makes sense. That makes sense. How do people sign up for this? Do share that.
Absolutely. So again, you can actually either go to my website at monalisaco.com, and that's monalisaco.com, or shoot me an email at therapy with Ramona C. And again, that's therapy with Ramona C at gmail.com.
Excellent. And before we wrap up here, there's something I need to make the connection of. I meant to ask you this earlier when we were chatting, because how did you come up with the name Mona Lisa when that's, uh, we have the painting and then your name is Ramona. So I'm like, okay, what's the connection here? What was the whole connection with the Mona Lisa name? And you're just so tickled. Do you,
You're
do you
you're gonna love it. You're
tell?
So, when I was younger, I would ask my parents where they got my name from, and my mom and my dad, they loved Nat King Cole, Natalie Cole, so I would hear this Mona Lisa song by Nat King Cole and Natalie Cole all the time. They'd play it like loud on our speaker on Sunday morning while we're cleaning. And, I asked my parents, like, where did you get my name from? Well, I was named after a flower girl in their wedding, Ramona, but my mother wanted to name me Alicia. So my middle name is Alicia. And so from when I was a child, the Ramona Alicia, my parents always nicknamed me Mona Lisa. That's been my name growing up. That has
Ah,
been
how
my name
cute.
growing up. So
How cute and how fitting. I love it. I love it. I love it. That's excellent. Before we end our conversation here, is there last minute tips you want to give? Any closing parting messages of wisdom that you'd like to share with our audience?
First of all, I appreciate being on this platform, and I appreciate being with you and talking about such amazing topics. And when I get to talk about wellness, I light up. Like my heart is very full. And one of the things that I would really want people to understand is take care of yourself. Um,
Yes,
we are on a society where we're just go 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 go.
do that. Yeah.
Stop for just a second, right? Like, give yourself permission to relax, reset, refocus if you need to. Give yourself permission to understand that you got to take care of your body, your mind, your soul.
Yes.
Give
Yeah.
yourself permission to get help if you need to. Give
Yeah.
yourself permission to actually tell yourself that you are worthy and you desire everything that you want. So
Yeah.
give yourself permission. You may not look like what you see on TV. You may not look like what you see on social media. You may not have gotten all 20,000 things done today, but you're worthy, and give yourself the time to relax, reset, refocus. Otherwise, you burn out and then you're not good for anybody.
Ramona, that was very well said. Thank you for speaking those words of wisdom. One last time, where can our listening and watching audience find you? Please share how people can get in contact with you.
Absolutely. So again, my website is monalisaco.com. My email address is therapy with Ramona C, and Ramona is Ramona and C for my last initial. So therapy with Ramona C at gmail.com. And you can actually find me on Instagram by the same therapy with Ramona C. If you want to actually listen to my podcast, you can look it up at Cope in the Workplace on Apple and Spotify, and so that you can get some little tidbits of information to be resilient in the work.
Ramona, it was such a pleasure having you. Thank you
You are
for being here today.
such Black Girl Magic. I loved being here with you, and thank you so much for this amazing. Man, listen, you have made my heart be real full today, so I appreciate you for having
Likewise,
me.
likewise, for sure. Likewise. Thank you, Ramona.
You're listening to Empress Conversations podcast with your host, Maggie Peary. Conversations with Maggie. Yeah, yeah. Empress. Join us next time on the next episode of Empress Conversations with Maggie. To learn more about guests or for more information on working with Maggie, go to www.empressconversationswithmaggie.com/get-started.